My name is Brett Neuman. I'm with StatSlice Systems. Today we're going to be talking about a new plugin for Microsoft Excel 2013 called GeoFlow, which allows you to map geospatial data. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about who we are. And our company is called StatSlice Systems. We're a Dallas-based business intelligence firm. We specialize in data warehousing and dashboarding, and we do some predictive analytics for some of our clients. We have partnerships with Microsoft and Tableau and ClickView, as well as a couple of other dashboarding companies out there. If you don't know too much about Tableau, ClickView, XLQ, Jerome BI, I encourage you to go out to our website and read up a little bit about those companies. They have some incredibly powerful dashboarding tools that are fairly new to the market these days. Microsoft is also doing some very interesting things with BI lately. One of the features, of course, we're going to show you GeoFlow, but also, in looking at their Office 2013 product they've recently released, they're doing a lot more with BI these days. So there's also a big up-and-comer to watch. So if you have any other questions about us, please consult the website, or you can email us, and I'll give you some email addresses at the end of the demo. So let's start talking about GeoFlow. GeoFlow is an exciting new plugin for Excel 2013. I will say that it is only available with the Professional Plus version of Excel, so you might need to upgrade a little bit if you're on standard, but it's well worth it, because that Professional Plus version is going to give you not just GeoFlow, but also Power Pivot and Power View, which is a new reporting tool, which I blogged about on the StatSlice blog a couple of days ago. And now, of course, we're going to see GeoFlow. It is a separate download. GeoFlow is, as far as getting the plugin for Excel. And I'm not going to post a link to it because the link is really long and not very pretty. But if you just Google GeoFlow, it's the first link that shows up. I will post a blog entry on statslice.com later today that provides the link for GeoFlow. I'll also provide a video for this webinar and for the cinematic tour that we're going to do here at the end. So I'll get to that. A few of the features of GeoFlow is, of course, it allows you to plot geospatial data. It utilizes Bing, the Bing mapping engine, to look up addresses and plot them on the map. It's also going to use Bing Maps for the actual physical map. It's going to use their 3D version of the maps, which is very interesting. The advantage to 3D maps over 2D maps is that you get these three-dimensional column charts as opposed to just a flat two-dimensional plane, which really with that, all you can do is like a colored dot or something. So here we get to have bar charts, stacked bar charts, as well as pie charts and things like that I'm going to show you. There's also multiple layers of data that you can have on this, so really the advantage there is that you can display two different sets of data on the same view, and you can kind of switch between them, or you can show them both at the same time. So you can have two different types of charts on there. So maybe a heat map overlaid with a bar chart looks really cool. I'll certainly show you that. Another feature, of course, is the timeline, which is a very slick little feature that allows you to play your data over time and see the progression of data. And maybe what I'll show you with my data is that it's a very cyclical nature. Every week we get a new batch of customers, and so it kind of dips down during the beginning of the week and fills up during the end of the week. So that's very interesting. And then the ability to create a cinematic tour of your data. It's one of the biggest features of GeoFlow at the end, and it's a very visually stunning representation of your data. The downside, of course, is that you don't get to record that video. So I'll talk a little bit about how we were able to actually record the video ourselves and I've posted the video on our YouTube channel. So check out StatSlice Inc., which is our video channel, and you can see the video that we've done there. And of course, I'll play for the video for you at the end of this webinar. So let's go straight into the demo. And here I'm just going to pop up Excel and show you our data set. The data that we have available to show you today is really a representation of our customers and which retail store they visit. So I have 2 retail stores here today. Dallas is one, and San Antonio is where the other one is located. And we've taken a sampling of customers from all over the United States, mostly in Texas, but they are from everywhere. And we're going to chart, we're going to do a count of the number of customers that have come to our store from each zip code on each day. And the reason why we have that, of course, the purchase date here is because we want to look at the data over time and maybe see some sort of some trends over time. But these are our 2 main columns that we're going to be looking at, which is the customer zip code and the count of customers. You can see, from some of the zip codes here in Dallas, the numbers do get, larger. So this could be an interesting data set. Now, the first step here is, of course, getting your data into Excel. And the way I did this was I ran a query on my database, and then I cut and pasted the data in here. So I would imagine that's the most likely way that y'all will get data into Excel is a more manual process. But you do have a couple of other options at your disposal if you're familiar with Excel and if you know how to connect to a database. If you come up to the Data tab, you have the ability to create a new data connection. And here you have a list of data sources to choose from, whether it be SQL Server, Analysis Services, are probably the 2 main ones. If you connect to SQL Server and you know the server name and the password, you can write your own query and pull that data back. Another great method is using Power Pivot. Again, this feature is only available in Professional Plus version of Office, but it can be a very powerful BI tool for millions of records. Depending on your data set, that is a very interesting BI tool to utilize, and hopefully we'll do a webinar about Power Pivot here shortly, so stay tuned to our blogs for some updates on that. But today's webinar, I'm going to show you GeoFlow, obviously, so I'm going to take my data set here, and I'm going to launch GeoFlow. Now, again, it is a separate install, so once you've installed it and launched off Excel, you're going to have a button right here on the Insert tab, and you're going to have a little button in the GeoFlow section, and it's going to launch our GeoFlow preview pane here, which allows me to select one of our tours that we have for this sheet. Now, this is a tour that I've already put together for you, and I'm going to show you that at the end of the demo. What I want to show you now is how to create a new one and start from scratch, essentially. So I'm going to click New Tour here, and GeoFlow will pop up. And what you can see is that we've got a globe here. Much like Google Earth, this is the Bing version of Earth, and we're going to use this engine to map our data. So again, you can see the 3D representation of the map here is what's really unique about GeoFlow. And I don't know of a mapping tool in any of our other software that we use that has a 3D version of this. So let's map our data, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to map first the store location, because I actually have addresses for the store location. So if I go store address, store city, store state, and store zip code, you can see they're going to show up over here next to the geography section. And it already recognizes each field as what the data type is, whether it be address, city, state, or zip. We also have a number of other data points to choose from, latitude, longitude. If you provide these things, then GeoFlow will kind of automatically pick up on what data type it is and automatically map it. If it gets it wrong, you have to override it right here. But as you can see, if you name things correctly, it should be pretty straightforward and easy. And then I'll map that, and you'll see what we've got here is 2 little data points. These are my stores, one in Dallas, one in San Antonio. But they just kind of put some little bitty points on there. So if we give it an actual metric or an actual data point to map, it will turn that into a column chart. So my metric is the number of customers that goes to each store, and you can see they're fairly comparable. So the bar charts look about the same height. Now they're both the same color. So if I want to add a slicer in here, like store name, I can do that, and it will slice my data and color the bars separately. The next step here would be to look at the properties of the column charts, and what I can do here is flip over and modify the height and the thickness of the bars to fit my graph if I'd like to. I like where they are. It's not really a big deal. So generally the default options are what you want to keep, and that's really another great thing about GeoFlow is that it's dead simple to create these graphs. You don't really have to do a lot with it. The default options are going to work just fine. Now let's plot a little something more interesting. I'd also like to plot all my customer zips and and the number of customers across all the zip codes. But in order to do that, since I've already plotted the store address geographic information, I now want to plot something else. So I'm going to add a layer of data. So here if I click New Layer, and you can see it now I've got 2 layers to choose from, I'll plot the customer zips, we'll map those, and then I'll give it the height is the number of customers. So now you see I've got all my customers from all over the country mapped here, and it scales my column charts in relation to where the majority of customers are coming from. So in Dallas, we've got large clusters, and across the rest of the planet, we have much smaller bars. This data, of course, is not that interesting until we add a few slicers, like the store name. And so now you can see that blue is the Dallas store, and orange is the San Antonio store. And it looks like the majority of people come to Dallas. And we have a couple of options for our column charts. We have either stacked or clustered. Clustered is going to put the bars side by side. So if I was to zoom in here, you can see that here I've got a bar chart, and it says I've got 1,700 from San Antonio, but also 70 people from this zip code went up to Dallas at one point or another. So side by side gives us a little bit better visual representation of our data. So like I said, there's a couple of great options. In addition to column charts, we also have bubble charts, which are really cool. Once you add a category like store name here, you can see that it actually creates some pie charts for us, which are really interesting. So I like the pie charts. Now, one cool thing that I can do with the data is actually add an annotation, which is going to be a little bit of floating text about our data. So I might say this is data explanation, and we can say something like 50% of customers visit the Dallas store, something along those lines. And there we go. When we zoom out, we still see our annotated data. So you can put some annotations up here and down here and kind of explain your data a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and show you the third type of chart, which is the heat map. This is really what I think is the coolest because you can see the distribution as it clusters around the city a lot more prevalent than in the outlying areas. So that's a real nice overview. Another great feature to look at here is the timeline. I was mentioning earlier, if we want to look at, go back to the column chart and add our store name in there, we may want to see how our customers visited our store over time. And so I've added purchase date. I'm going to drop that down into our time section here. And what you can see is that it automatically brings up a little timeline controller down here for me. And I can hit play, and it will show my customers accumulate over time. And here is our calendar representation up here. And our date's coming in from March to end of May. It was really the timeline that I picked. And what we can see is that more customers come in May than they do in March. So we assume these stores are, swimwear or something along those lines. When you select a time component, you do have a couple of options. Here we have instant, which is going to show you immediate point in time data sets. And I don't think that's very prevalent here. We also have time accumulation, which is what you're seeing, which is going to add up the number of customers over a period of time. What I think is the best representation of our data is persist to last. And what this means is that at the end of the day, the number of customers stays on the screen. In instant, what's going to happen is at the end of the day, we go back to 0 every time. So it's just going to be point in time, whereas persist to last is going to leave the last one on the screen. So I know I'm playing a video here, and I know over the internet the video doesn't transfer as well, so it might be a little blotchy for you guys watching over the web, but just know that this plays nice and seamlessly on my computer here. So I'll try to take a video of this and post it at the end of the webinar and let you see how well this looks. So there's your time component, and then there are some time options that you have available to you. I can modify the rate that we're playing things back. You can go really fast or really slow, and that really depends on how many talking points you have. If you want to spend a while talking and analyzing the data, you slow it down. Otherwise, leave it at the default. Like I said, the defaults are normally pretty sufficient. So after timeline, the last feature that I want to show you is called a scene. And a scene is going to help you give another perspective of your data. So what I'll do here is add a scene, and it copies the existing scene that I've got. But what I'm going to do is change this into a heat map. And so now here I have the old column chart representation of data. Here I have a heat map, and I might remove the time component. I'm going to move the heat map to the top and start with this scene. And then what I can do here is if I hit the play tour button up here, it's going to cycle through my scene and show you the first frame, transition over to the next frame, and play a little movie for you. So here, what we might do is, like I said, we can show the data in a little bit different light. So I can kind of rotate the map and give you a different angle at your data. And then I can also click on settings here and change various things about the scene, like the transition and how long it's going to show on the screen. So here I might want it to just show for, let's say, 8 seconds. The transition I'd like to show for about 6 seconds. And the transition effect is going to be a push in, which is essentially a zoom in. Then when we come into this next frame, we're going to change its settings. Its duration can be, let's say, 8 seconds. And the transition might be 6. And I'll change this over to a flyover. So I'm going to hit play tour here. And I know, again, video doesn't come in very well over the internet. But just note that, we're now zooming in on our heat map data, and then it's going to try to transition in to the other scene here and bring it up and play our point in time data as we kind of fly over and see our data in a different perspective. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up the demo that I put together previously for you and show you that cinematic representation of our data. And see here, I've got this demo tour, and it's got several different scenes of data. So we've got some different angles and some different representations, as well as even different chart types. And so then if I hit play here, it'll cycle through those different scenes for us. And then what I'll do is use Cam Studio or another free software to actually record this video and compress it and drop it into PowerPoint at the end. So since I know this is a little sketchy over the internet, I'm going to stop this right here and go back to my slideshow and show you how I inserted this. So if you see here where I've got the video inserted, we can just actually go into edit mode if we want. And I can cut this out. And when you create a new slide, it normally gives you these little helper buttons, and you want the far right one. And it says, insert video. I can just browse over here to my videos and select the one I want, and there we go. No problem, nice and simple. And then when you're talking about your presentation, now you've got this great video with some really key talking points. If you add your annotations in there, it can make for a really great presentation. So I'll pause that there. Of course, this video is available for download. So those are the features of GeoFlow that I wanted to show. And I'm going to open it up now for questions. So if you have any questions about what you've seen today, go ahead and type your questions in the question box, and we'll get to them in a timely manner. So thank you all for listening in, and join us next week for the next webinar. Bye-bye.